Hello and welcome to Horror Cult Trash Over, the show that discusses all the masterpieces and trashpieces of genre cinema. I'm Gary.
And I'm Chris.
And finally, we are making use of the masterpiece term in our introduction.
Finally.
I mean, it's been a while, yeah.
It's been a while.
This is probably the second film we've covered that I've actually gave 5 stars to. I mean, not counting Nightmare on Elm Street, because that was an originals versus remake episode. Before we continue, though, we have had a bit of dodgy weather here in the UK today. So you might hear that at some point if it picks up again. And our arsehole neighbours are being loud again, as always.
It's seemingly calmed down for the moment. It's Storm Sierra. So I won't make a Sierra, the musician, bass joke.
You sure you don't want to?
No, I'm good. No,
Okay,
no,
well...
I was tempted to, but no, I'm alright.
We are continuing our Valentine's special. Well, this is our second and final Valentine's special episode. And whereas last week we focused on a film that was set around Valentine's Day, this time we've gone for a more romantic and rather sexy film.
Ooh, very sexy.
This is 1983's The Hunger, directed by Tony Scott, who has mainly directed action films other than this, such as Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop 2, True Romance, Unstoppable. He's done some commercials, I believe.
So he got his start in commercials and music videos. And that is very evident in The Hunger. Yeah. Very much so.
This is on a budget of $1,832,898.
Oddly specific there.
Very specific. and this is just a fucking great film. Last few weeks we've just had trash to talk about, but I mean, even like before, we've had films that have been surprisingly enjoyable. That they're obviously not to the level of this. This is just fine filmmaking, and as I said, masterpieces of genre cinema. This actually turns a genre on its head, the whole vampire subgenre, because this is very different to other vampire films.
Yeah, it's definitely a product of its time.
Yeah,
I'd say definitely
screams 80s.
Yeah, very, very much 1983. All throughout. And I like when films do that. I like when they take old sort of ideas, and vampirism is, one that has sort of creeped up decade after decade.
Yeah, and I think the 80s is probably the best time for vampire films, because as well as this, you also had the likes of Fright Night and The Lost Boys as well. So, all these films that tried to be, hip and cool for its time, it's very evident, and I think 80s vampire films are just really, it works best, and it's not really until last year that I saw a vampire film that has stood out since something that would have been released around that time. I mean, obviously there's Bram Stoker's Dracula, that was a good film, 30 Days of Night, that was really good, but I mean a real standout, feels original, feels, like it is something new. But then, upon watching this, the film I was talking about previously was Bliss, which we watched at Fright Fest last year. But upon watching this, I could see that I was actually very influenced by this.
Yeah, there's quite a few correlations between, particularly the story between this film and Bliss. I would say another vampire film that really turns the genre on its head would be George A. Romero's Martin.
That's true.
I love that film, and I would probably say that's one of my favourite vampire films. Is it a vampire film? Is it not? It's left for us to decide, which is sort of the whole point of Martin. But that's a fantastic film.
Which is also something that this film does as well, because the word vampire is not used once in this film.
No, and it's not... When we say vampire, we're not talking Christopher Lee with fangs... biting on the neck of some buxom Victorian ladies.
Yeah.
It's not like that. There's similarities. There's the whole idea of feeding on blood to stay alive. And, the people are cut at the neck. But other than that, it does definitely turns it on its head.
There's two types of vampires. You got your romantic / erotic / love story vampires, and then obviously you've got your psychopathic murdering vampires. So, I mean, for the latter, the best example I can think of right now is probably 30 Days of Night. That's a lot more vampires are there to kill you. But then you get something like this. Is a great example of how the romantic side of vampirism should be portrayed, I think.
Yeah, the whole idea of the vampire has always been steeped in sort of eroticism, and it gives, when you look at sort of not just Bram Stoker's novel, but the Universal monsters, and Bela Lugosi, and his portrayal of Dracula, it leads itself to maybe being a little sexier. I can't imagine anyone getting off on the Mummy or the werewolf, but I feel like vampires keep so much of their look, and that's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
That it can lead itself to an eroticism that other monster movies can't.
Yeah, that's very true.
At the end of the day, a vampire is a monster. That's how we've seen them. That's how they're portrayed. They are monsters, and I wouldn't call this a creature feature by any sort of count, but they are non-human.
Yeah,
that's the idea.
It is also what's interesting is I think this, if it's not the first, it must be at least the second LGBT film we've covered, and obviously we're an LGBTQ plus podcast. This is quite fitting, really.
Yeah, it is. I feel like the LGBT aspect and the relationship between two women in this case isn't really played up, I don't think.
No, and do you mean as in it wasn't a massive deal made about it?
There wasn't a massive deal made about it, but I didn't think the whole idea of them being lesbians, I didn't think that was the point. That wasn't the point.
And that's what I really liked about it, because I mean, obviously with the time it was released as well, this isn't really a time where homosexuality wasn't in every other film. It's not like it was an ongoing thing. So the fact that this decided to be quite graphic with promoting homosexuality, and then didn't make a big deal out of it, I think that's a fantastic move on Tony Scott's behalf.
I would say that to a certain extent. I think we'll get into it deeper as the film goes on, because it's hard.
Yeah.
Unless we're describing.
We'll go through some trivia first. Speaking of said lesbian relationship in the film, the script originally called for Susan Sarandon to be drunk during the sex scene with her co-star Catherine Deneuve. I'll get the pronunciation right sometimes today. So they wanted her to be drunk, but Susan Sarandon said, no, fuck this. If I'm going to do this sex scene, I'm going to do it sober, because I want my character to choose to have sex with Catherine Deneuve.
Yeah.
Which is fair play to Susan Sarandon, David Bowie, absolute icon in every aspect of the word.
Oh, yeah.
Fashion, film icon, music icon, just one of the coolest human beings to have ever lived.
Absolutely.
Learned to play the cello for his music scenes. And he also stood on the George Washington Bridge every night whilst filming this film, and screamed every punk rock song that he knew to make sure that his voice was hoarse enough for the film.
Oh, okay.
Which, again, bravo, David Bowie.
Wow, going all out.
Yeah. He actually co-wrote a song with Iggy Pop that appears in this film. I don't know if it's specifically for this film, but that appears as well, which we'll mention when it comes to it. The costume designer, Milena Canonero, disappeared to get some fabric for David Bowie's handkerchief from Rome whilst filming. And they're filming in London, so that's a bit of a spontaneous trip right there to go and get some fabric.
Yeah, I feel that there's definitely an emphasis on the style and the look, and making sure everything is spot on aesthetically.
Yeah, the fashion is fucking stunning in this film.
Is, yeah.
It really is. David Bowie was actually intimidated by Catherine Deneuve.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
She was, I mean, at the time, she was a real icon. You know, the same as Bowie. I mean, this is quite early on for Susan Sarandon. But Catherine Deneuve, you know, she'd been in Belle de Jour and Repulsion. She'd been Oscar nominated, and you know, she was a real fine French actress, very, very continental. Yeah, I could see why she'd be quite intimidating and drop dead gorgeous, even if she was a little older during this film. But still beautiful to this day. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing the main three cast members have in common is they all ooze sex appeal. Like, even Susan Sarandon.
Yeah.
But apparently David Bowie and Susan Sarandon got on very well to the point, and there's a bit of tea, to the point they had an affair whilst filming.
Bloody hell.
I know. Look, I've always assumed that David Bowie has just slept with everybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
probably.
like, wasn't there rumours about him and Mick Jagger as well?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so yeah, that didn't really surprise me too much, but you know, a bit of gossip. Oh, but also a bit of gossip with David Bowie is Ridley Scott, Tony's brother, obviously director of Alien. He was originally set to direct this film, but he passed on it when David Bowie was announced. Oh, what's going on there?
Bit harsh.
And last bit of trivia. I mean, we probably should mention this is based on the novel by Whitley Strieber, and there's 2 sequels to it as well.
Okay.
This had a very different ending originally. Well, it ended a little earlier, but an extra film. MGM wanted an extra scene added in at the end for the possibility of a sequel, because it was in the 80s, and as we all know, every 80s horror film had to have a sequel.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this is one of the few that didn't, and which is quite shocking because
Did it do
it
well?
made its money back.
Did it?
Yeah, it did well. I don't know critically if it did well because it has become a cult film now.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly underrated with its 6.7 on IMDb. I think it deserves more than that.
That is low.
Should easily be in the 7s at least. But yeah, the original ending wouldn't have had any sort of continuity for a sequel, but they changed it, added an extra scene, and Susan Sarandon hated the ending because she believed that is our neighbours being loud again. What the fuck was that?
What was that for?
I have no idea. Anyway, so yeah, they changed the ending, and there is actually a sequel in development now, but Susan Sarandon hated the ending because it goes against everything that they were trying to stand for, with like the messages of addiction, and how at the end, you know, her character fighted, you know, in a metaphorical way, she fought addiction and you know, wanted to end it, but no, MGM didn't want that. They just wanted a sequel, more money.
Yeah, which I think sometimes we have to remember that, you know, the film business is a business.
Yeah.
So if we try and...
I mean, I'd love to have seen...
Some points.
I'd love to have seen a sequel in the 80s from, you know, with the same cast. That would have been great.
Oh, yeah.
But it is in development now. I assume Catherine Deneuve... Why the fuck am I forgetting how to say her surname already? This is really... You know, really positive, isn't it? 15 minutes into the episode. I assume she'll be returning. Or if they're going to cast someone who looks like her, maybe.
Depends how they go with the sequel. It depends how they go with it. And who it's focused. I suppose Miriam, which is the character that Catherine Deneuve plays, she would be the focus. Really. But... I don't know.
There was a spin-off TV series.
There was, yeah, in the early 2000s. It was like an anthology series similar to Tales of the Crypt and Tales of the Dark Side and Freddy's Nightmares, and it was just about sexy vampire stories, really. hosted by Charles Dance for the first season and then David Bowie for the second season. I'd never heard of it
No, me neither.
until today. Who knows how good or bad that was.
Well, getting into the film, the plot, and the very false plot, is a love triangle develops between a beautiful yet dangerous vampire, her cellist companion, and a gerontologist. There we go.
Okay. What
Words are
ontologist?
gerontologist.
Let me have a look. What have you written down? Show me.
Gerontologist?
Gerontologist.
This is what Susan Sarandon's job is in this film.
There we go.
But a love triangle is not true. It is not a love
that's
triangle.
not true. No.
So, thanks to the false advertising on IMDb.
Yeah, you'll find out why as we go through the story, but that is very false.
Yeah. So we open with Bela Lugosi's Dead by Bauhaus, and Bauhaus actually performing the song as in the listed in the cast as disco group.
Disco.
In a
Disco group.
in a nightclub in supposedly New York, but it's actually London.
Yeah.
This is filmed in.
You wouldn't have guessed, really, to be fair.
No,
You know,
no.
it does look very New Yorkish.
It's a very 80s nightclub, and we get introduced to John, played by David Bowie, and Miriam, played by Catherine Deneuve. Did I say it right that time?
Yes.
Yes!
And the song goes on quite a while.
It does.
So we definitely see the music video
Yeah.
influence
It feels like a music video during the scene.
It does feel like a music video. It's very, for me, reminiscent of in Body Double, when you have Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and they do like the whole music, you know, the whole song. And it feels like we start right on a music video. The lead singer of Bauhaus is singing to the camera. Behind some sort of fencing. And there are people in the nightclub dancing, looking very new wave, very goth. They're all wearing sunglasses indoors.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It's so cool. I love this opening credit sequence. We get some hard cuts between the nightclub and John and Miriam driving with a random couple from the nightclub, taking them home with them. And I've got here in my notes, minutes in and this film is incredible and makes smoking look cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoking.
They're smoking every 5 minutes.
Always having a ciggy.
Probably more than that, actually. I'd say every few minutes they're smoking in this film.
Oh, yeah.
It does look like a cigarette commercial, but I mean, it looks incredibly cool.
Lots of sort of up close, lighting a cigarette, smoking, very beautiful people, not saying much, just smoking a ciggy.
Yeah, and then before we know it, within this first 5 minutes, we get some boobs.
We do.
The tits come out within the first 5 minutes, and then we get some hard cuts with some monkeys. But like fast cuts, should I say? It's very intertwining between the two, and then the monkey, one of them starts killing the other one, and then we also see the nightclub couple being killed by John and Miriam. But they do this by using their, I believe it's called an ankh. It's
Ankh.
like a pendant necklace. Ankh. There we go. They slit their throats with them, and then after this, we are introduced to Susan Sarandon, who plays Sarah, and she finds the dead monkey, lights a cig to investigate.
She does.
Of
Very
course.
upset, so she lights a ciggy.
And then Bowie burns the bodies and has a shower with Catherine.
Yeah, so these couple, we're assuming they're a couple, Miriam and John, they pick up this other couple at the club and take them home and end up killing them, slitting their throats, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of the way that everybody gets killed in this film. It's not a particularly gory film, not a particularly... There's blood, but it's...
Some good practical effects as well.
Yeah, but it's not, you know, balls to the wall gore.
No.
So very much sex and death and blood are intertwined from the get-go. And I think these hard cuts between the people and the monkeys. I'm not 100% sure what it's saying. What do you think that means?
I think
because the whole idea of the people acting like the monkeys act is, you know, particularly in the first half of the film, brought up a fair bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that means, or what do you think he's trying to say?
Well, they spoke a lot about the aging of the monkeys. And I think that was very much entwined with the aging of David Bowie's character a little later on. So I think they're just trying to develop connections and similarities between these characters, between the monkey and the vampires. Why I'm not sure. Like I said, I think it's all to do with the connection between their aging, because essentially the monkeys begin aging like 5 years within a minute or something like that a little later on, and then at the same time so does David Bowie, and then with the monkey killing another monkey at the same time as they're killing this other couple, I think that's where the connection comes in. They're essentially the same characters.
Yeah, I think maybe, you know, the whole idea of us being evolved from apes,
it's definitely to do with evolution.
So the whole idea is that, you know, through, you know, all these years of evolution, we're still just as primitive as we always were. Now, I've not read a book on this film. I've never heard Tony Scott or the author of the novel say any of this. It's just my interpretation. But I feel that because the film is so fancy and the people in it are so fancy and they've got all these beautiful things and they're gorgeous people and they're dressed to the nines constantly, but at the end of the day they are all feeding off of each other. So it's the idea of, you know, the one monkey eats the other monkey and it's devouring each other to live. And it don't matter how nice your car is, how, you know, beautiful you play the piano, or you could be a posh old cellist or whatnot. We all have that basic instinct to survive. Yeah. And that comes from the ape that we all were to begin with. Yeah. I know it's a bit of a long-winded.
This is going to be our
idea,
deepest episode.
But I feel like that's maybe what they're going for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think so.
The whole idea that we all eventually age and we die, and that's a certain thing, and it always was and it always will be. And it's, you know, the 80s was a very much seen. I mean, I didn't live through the 80s, but looking back, it's very much seen as dog eat dog. Yeah. And the survival of the fittest, and, you know, you watch a film like, you know, Wall Street, where, you know, money and power and greed, you know, in the 80s was seen as, you know, the good thing is what you needed. You needed to be top dog, or you were eaten. You were nothing. And it's something similar. And then we, I feel like there's a bit of a connection to Hellraiser as well.
I've noticed a few Hellraiser similarities in this as well.
And the idea of, within Hellraiser, Uncle Frank feeds off of other people to live, to survive. And I feel like this is something that began in this film, because obviously Hellraiser was much later, about 4 years later. Yeah. So not that much later, but 4 years later. But the whole idea of devouring the weak to live, I think that's what this film is going for. And that's the whole idea of the vampire. Yeah. That's what vampires always were, you know. Dracula had to drink blood to survive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Clive Barker's ever seen this film. I mean, I assume he has, and cause if I was to assume, I'd think that he was very influenced by this film, because not even just Hellraiser, I also noticed a few similarities to Candyman as well. The whole, you know, the whole Sarah and Miriam relationship kind of reminded me a lot of Candyman, like the way when they first meet, how she hears her talking, but she's not actually speaking, and then essentially she is her victim, but in a very romantic twisted kind of way.
Yeah, there's definitely within Candyman. There's a very underlying sexual tension. The hunger sort of puts it more out there.
Yeah.
Very much so. But yeah, I do see those similarities.
But yeah, so I mean, back to where we were in the shower with John and Miriam. There's some arse grabbing. Miriam gets her tits out. More boobs within the first 10 minutes now. And Sarah's studying the monkeys and what's just happened. That's intertwined with John smoking. Again, David Bowie looking amazing, smoking at a rainy window. Looks like it's about to start singing Warwick Avenue by Duffy.
Oh, that is a random reference. No one's going to get that.
Well, sad song from the 80s with Rainy Window. I need an example.
Oh God. I'm sure there's some.
We'll go with something we're going to reference quite a lot through this. Total Eclipse of the Heart. There we go.
It's very much okay.
This is the film embodiment of Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler.
This, and I said to Gary, I said, aren't you getting Total Eclipse of the Heart vibes? And he's like, oh, not really. And then there's a scene with doves.
And floaty curtains.
Floaty curtains throughout.
There's a lot of floaty curtains.
So many floaty curtains in this film. And doves as well. And Gary's like, yeah, okay. It's totally Eclipse of the Heart. Very, very much so.
Well, back to Susan. She looks at the monkey who's looking a little aggressive now. She's like, don't you snarl at me, you evil son of a bitch. And I'm just there like, yes! She absolutely slays the game in this Susan Sarandon. And it's really upped my appreciation for her so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved her before this, but even more so now.
What sort of roles have you seen Susan Sarandon? I mean, I saw her in Atlantic City, and she was quite sexy in that.
Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was kind of a subtle, kind of sexy role, in a way.
That was kind of sexy, wasn't it? That wasn't really seeing Susan Sarandon as a highly sexual woman, or in a sexual way.
If anything, it was her trying to get to that point.
Yeah, because she was very dowdy to begin with in Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it was always tongue-in-cheek and comedy.
Bad Mum's Christmas.
Bad Mum's Christmas. I think we need to watch maybe a bit more of Susan Sarandon.
We do.
I mean, I've seen Thelma and Louise and such, but she's a fantastic actress.
She is.
Yeah.
I definitely need to watch more Catherine Deneuve, because this is the only film I've seen of hers.
We watched Belle de Jour together.
Yeah. Did we?
Yes, we did.
I didn't rate it on IMDb then. It didn't come up.
Oh. Well, you should have.
Well, I'll have to do that after this.
Yeah.
But yeah, and...
the one where she's in she's tied to a tree getting whipped.
Oh, okay.
Surely you remember that.
Are you sure we watched this together?
Yeah, she decides that she's going to become a prostitute during the day whilst her husband's out at work because she's bored.
Oh.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Can't remember a lot about this.
I'll have to watch that one again.
Oh, definitely remind me about it.
Yeah.
Susan has a go at a monkey, and then we get some Victorian era flashbacks for John and Miriam, which kind of shows you just how old these vampires are, and
apologies, it's not Victorian.
Is it not?
No, it's probably more 18th century. So the very obviously Catherine Deneuve's a French woman. I believe this was a reference to the times like Marie Antoinette. So that would sort of... Did you see the stylings?
Yeah.
The big white hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so very sort of Marie Antoinette. I think she said... how long had her and John been together? Is it 200 years?
Yeah.
So that would take you to late 1700s.
Well, I'm just a dumbass today, clearly.
No, you're not. I was just explaining.
Yeah, they start watching Susan Sarandon having an interview on TV. She's got a book out, it turns out, and about the sort of the aging, and she starts discussing about children who have had a deformity where they look like they're in their 70s and they're actually in their teens, if I remember right.
Yeah, no, that's correct, yeah. So she's a doctor and she specialises...
She's a gerontologist.
Yes, thank you.
Whatever the fuck that is.
I'm assuming That's a doctor who specialises in aging
Yeah.
or prolonging life, which is what her book's about, which is what her study's about, which is what the study of the monkeys was about. Is her and, sort of ways to stay forever young. That's kind of her thing. And obviously that interests John and Miriam, which is why they're watching her on television.
And then Alice turns up, who's a photographer. And at first, I didn't really get the relationship that was going on between the three of them.
Yeah.
I think in the end, they must be her music teachers.
Yeah, so Alice is a school kid.
She's a photographer, musician.
She's a school kid, but she loves taking photographs. So she's always taking photographs on a Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
But she goes there twice weekly to learn to play the violin.
Yes, she turns up, tells John that he looks awful, which is fucking rude and not true.
Well, it is kind of true, because he hasn't slept in a while, has he? So the idea is that John is deteriorating slowly at this point, and that's what sort of comes to the foreground after this. But he does, he is looking a bit rough, and he hasn't slept.
They have a little jam together, as musicians would call it. We've got
Green Day, for Christ's sake.
We've got John on cello. We've got Alice on the violin and Miriam on piano.
Yes.
And they're blasting out a classical banger. And then we see what is really interesting to me, and this is why I think it really turns the tropes of a vampire on their head, is we get John looking in the mirror and he actually has a reflection.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is, again, as well as not the word vampire not being said in this film, they also have reflections, which is also new, and they go out in daylight as well.
Yeah, and when Alice takes photographs, they appear in the photographs.
Yeah, they're in the photographs.
Yeah.
So we see that, and then we go to Sarah, who's doing a book signing, and Miriam goes to meet her, and that's when they have the moment where Sarah thinks she hears her say something, and she's like, she thinks that she wants to talk to her, and then Miriam confirms she does want to talk to her, and then it just kind of moves on. John's watching cartoons, and his hair starts falling out. And then he has a conversation with Miriam about who's going to be there for her when he dies. And he dons a fucking incredible outfit with a hat, sunglasses and a leather jacket. And goes to see Sarah. And speak about a book and aging. To which she tells him that he needs to wait for her. She's got some appointments and she really doesn't want to talk to him.
No, so she probably gets a lot of weirdos come to see her at the hospital. So she kind of fobs him off. She feels sorry for him, though. He's explaining that he's 30 years old, but is, growing, but he's getting liver spots at an alarming rate, and he's aging at an alarming rate, and she just thinks he's a bit of a loon, and sort of says, well, just leave him waiting and wait until he just goes, because she feels sorry for him. She doesn't want him chucked out or anything.
Yeah, so he goes and waits in the waiting area, and we get, again, intertwining scenes between John and the monkey. This is the aggressive monkey, and he is aging rapidly fast, like on another level.
Yeah.
Like, this scene is incredible. The effects in this, the makeup effects and everything is fantastic. He ages really, really fast, but so does this monkey, and it's quite a disturbing scene with the monkey. We see it die and rot, which is, I couldn't tell, was that during that scene, or was that meant to be a time-lapse of the monkey?
During that scene.
So that's even more disturbing.
Yeah, so it's intercut with John's aging.
Yeah, so then that's the last time we see that connection between, John and the monkey.
Yeah, I think they sort of hinted at it at the beginning. They definitely showed it then. I think, the point that I was making earlier, if that's what they were trying to make, like, yeah, cool, we got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't keep going on about that.
Yeah. And then we get a chat between Brad and Janet.
Yes.
So obviously, for anyone who's not aware, Susan Sarandon plays Janet. in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and her fiance is Brad in that film. And then in the sequel, Brad is played by Cliff DeYoung, and Janet is obviously played by someone different. And Cliff DeYoung and Susan Sarandon are a thing in this film.
They are. Is this before?
I think it's before Shock Treatment. Was it?
This is after Shock Treatment, I think.
Oh, so that's even better then. So it's probably intentional.
Because Susan Sarandon didn't want to do Shock Treatment.
No.
She was like, no, you're right.
But she was replaced by another Slay Queen.
Oh, she absolutely was.
And then we see old man John looking in the mirror, and you just see at that point how much he is aged even more. And then Sarah, he bumps into Sarah, and he's basically like, nah, fuck this, I'm going. And then when she sees how much he's aged, then she's interested. She's like, oh shit, yeah, maybe we should talk about this.
Yeah.
And then we get a stylish roller skating scene to Fun Time by Iggy Pop. And John stabs the roller skater and just kind of leaves. Which is a bit of a random scene, really, because that doesn't really... He kind of leaves the roller skater to live.
Yeah. So what I sort of gathered throughout the film, I don't know if it's apparent at this point in the film, is that they have to feed once a week. Is it once a week?
I think it's once a week, yeah.
Feed once a week, but they have to sleep. Is it for a certain amount of time? I can't remember, please forgive me. So because John hasn't been sleeping...
Yeah.
That's why he's deteriorating so fast.
Yeah.
And I think he thinks that if he feeds more, it's going to help him. So it's quite specific. To live forever, it's quite specific what they need to do. And, you know, if anyone out there who struggled to sleep at night, you know, if your life depended on it, bloody hell, it would, you know...
Yeah.
That's why you're aging so quick. So, yeah, that's... quite an interesting concept. That's different to vampire lore.
Yeah.
And that's why this film sort of turns genre tropes on its head. Because yes, they have to feed on blood, but also you got to get a good night's sleep.
Yes.
Or you're going to die.
Then we...
A lesson for us all.
Well, John goes back to the house and Alice turns up to give Miriam some sheet music. And John asks her to play violin for him. She kind of recognises him and asks maybe if it's John's dad. Because obviously at this stage he is way gone now. He is really, really old. And he actually starts to look like Grandpa from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
He really does. He genuinely does.
He looks exactly like him.
He does, yeah.
And it honestly, this is where the fear factor of film comes in, because it looks fucking terrifying.
It's good effects.
It really is. And so she's playing violin for him, and he grabs her grabs her neck, and he kills her. And I was quite surprised by this, because I thought we were going to get Alice throughout the whole film. Yeah.
So this sort of shows his real desperation.
Yeah.
The fact that he would kill a child, and especially a child that they're so close to. That he's so desperate to live and to carry on that he would kill and essentially, you know, drink the blood of this child. Seemingly it is all in vain and pointless.
Yeah, doesn't happen.
But it's a definite low point for him, and I think it's probably at that point where he realizes that, you know, it's his time, and he will die.
Yeah, and
that is his lowest point.
Yeah, because then after this we get Miriam coming back, and she obviously sees the state he's in. They have a kiss despite him looking all gross, and he just keeps asking her to kill him, but she just obviously keeps saying she can't. Then she realizes that he's killed Alice, and she still doesn't want to kill him. He has to fall down some stairs into the basement. And I think that's at the point when she realizes as well. She's like, yeah, shit, this is it. He's definitely a goner. So she takes him upstairs in the lift, because their house is so fancy it has a fucking lift.
It does.
She takes him up to the attic, carries him into the total eclipse of the heart room. This is the bit where I realised how much it was like that music video.
There's like clear, bright light shining just in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And there's doves there. And you can't hear any wind. But these fucking sheer curtains are going absolutely crazy.
It's so stylish. Did we say this is before Total Eclipse of the Heart?
It was before Total Eclipse of the Heart.
There we go. I really hope
I'm sure it was.
This
if
is
I remember
responsible
correctly,
for that.
Total Eclipse of the Heart was a year after this, so it probably was. The music video probably was highly influenced by this film.
Yeah. So she puts him in a coffin, and puts him beside some other coffins and tells them all to be kind to him. So, what we're not aware at this point, which we find out later on, is actually all these other coffins are actually her exes.
No, we do realise that.
Do we?
Yeah. So, what referenced earlier when John and Miriam were talking, it was just after he'd lost his hair.
Oh,
he was
okay.
starting to lose his hair. And he asks her, who's going to take his place after he's gone. And then they're talking, and he says, how was it for the others when they died?
Okay, that makes sense.
How long
Yeah,
did
that
it
makes
take?
sense.
How did they feel? And she's trying to partly explain, but she's quite upset by the whole notion of it. So, the whole idea is that Miriam is completely eternal.
Mm.
So she is immortal, and she gives this power to live, forever to her lovers or her companions or whatnot, because she dates back to the Egyptian times.
Yeah.
Whereas John and her met, in the 1700s, 200 years previous. So that's the whole idea, and obviously they have to stick to these rules because she's given them part of her immortality, but they have to stick to the rules. John obviously hasn't been sleeping. It's his time to die. Seemingly that's happened to all the other people, and it is referenced women as well as men.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly why I'm not sure why this is really an LGBT film, because it's kind of she's given these people this ability because it's a love, know. I don't know. I mean, well, maybe it is actually. Maybe I've talked myself into thinking it is an LGBT film.
It really is. It absolutely is.
Because I don't necessarily want to say just because there's lesbians in it, it automatically becomes an LGBT film.
No, but I think...
Because that's not the main point of the film. For me, an LGBT film deals with, themes that the LGBT... God, it's hard to keep saying that. LGBT community has to deal with.
Yeah, but I think this film could be interpreted that way.
Yeah, maybe.
The whole idea of vampirism, it could be taken in that way. Like, I mean, The Lost Boys is a very... very gay film if you look into it enough, and I think Attack of the Queer Wolf, they covered this film as well, and they very much covered that point on their podcast as well about how this could be interpreted as a way of looking at homosexuality, and particularly with the 80s. I'm not sure whether this is at that stage, but you had the AIDS pandemic as well.
Yes, and absolutely.
Obviously,
I was thinking that.
And obviously, the exchanging of blood between these characters.
Exactly.
Is a very strong statement to make within that time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think all of that adds up to why this is an LGBT film. And I can't really see a reason as to why it would be embraced by the LGBT community, because... I mean, I think it's a decent LGBT film.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's negative towards it.
No, not at all, no.
Because even though they're vampires, these aren't necessarily villains. They're not bad characters. They're just, I mean, they obviously do go around killing people, but it's kind of portrayed in a way that they have to survive. They're not really portrayed as bad guys in the film.
Yeah, but...
Apart from maybe John.
John, when he kills Alice...
Yes. He's portrayed as more of a horror character, but once he's out of the picture, it's kind of... That's when I think it turns into more of a love story then. between Miriam and Sarah.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I think ultimately, Miriam is still a villain. I would still call her a villain because she kills innocent people to live and for her own, sake. The very selfish thing to do. Taking from one person something that you feel that you're more entitled to, that's villainous to me.
True.
And it eventually that leads to the end of the film.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm so reluctant to give spoilers because
I don't.
you're listening to
we
this
are
anyway.
gonna say.
So eventually, the Susan Sarandon character, Dr. Sarah Roberts, decides that she can't live that life. So I think she's probably our hero in this piece.
Yeah.
Because obviously every film has to have protagonists and antagonists.
Yeah.
She's at the heart of the piece.
Yeah, and still she's a bisexual character, and she's
yeah.
and she's a protagonist. So this is what I'm saying. This is why I think it's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sarah actually arrives at Miriam's house after John's put in a coffin, and she gives Miriam a number, and then she goes off, and a lieutenant arrives looking for Alice. And then we get some hard cuts intertwining between Sarah strutting down the road.
She's absolutely strutting.
Absolutely strutting down the road. Looking amazing. The lieutenant speaking to Miriam, and a truck heading towards the camera. The truck eventually nearly runs over Sarah. She's not paying attention because guess what she's doing? She's smoking.
She's lighting a cig.
She's lighting a cig. And yeah, then there's a little conversation about Alice. Doesn't really go anywhere. It comes back at the end, though.
Yeah, this is he's played by Dan Hedaya. Who I recognise as the dad from Clueless.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure he's been in other films, but that's where I recognise him from. Oh, with a fierce monobrow on the go.
Well, Sarah is in bed that same night, and she's having a cry, but it's cut in between that and Miriam, who's playing piano and also crying. So it's showing that sort of connection there between them, that romantic connection, I'd say. There's something there connecting the two already.
Yeah, but I think it's Miriam herself. I think this is all Miriam and her... I don't know if she has any sort of abilities.
Yeah, it kind of appears that way.
Yeah, but her sort of sensuality is sort of embedded itself within Sarah, because I don't think for a second that Dr. Sarah was a bisexual before meeting Miriam. I don't feel that way. She's engaged to a man, and all that business. So I don't know.
But then this also brings me back...
I feel like it's Miriam's allure, whether that be something slightly supernatural or not.
Yeah, which is what brings me back to the connection between this and Candyman. Because it's very much similar to how Candyman communicates with Virginia Madison. Candyman
is in, Virginia Madison's head and Miriam is in Sarah's head.
Yeah. Sarah goes back to Miriam's house the next day, and she has a bit of a nose around, finds a statue that Miriam thinks looks like her. I think it's a little insulting. The statue's nose is far too big to be Susan Sarandon.
No, Catherine Deneuve.
Yeah, she said that it looks like Susan Sarandon.
No, Susan. So Dr. Sarah says that the statue, the bust, looks like Miriam.
Well, either way, it looks like fucking neither of them. That nose is far too big.
Yeah, but I feel like it actually is a bust of her.
Yeah,
because she's so old.
Yeah.
That is a bust of her. And we get little, snippets of this throughout the conversation. So, the onk that so Susan Sarandon, and I keep naming them the actors.
Just do it. We know you're on about. It's fine.
I know. Yeah, but she's a doctor. She deserves to be called a doctor. But Susan Sarandon essentially, she likes the onk on around Catherine Deneuve's neck, and Catherine Deneuve's, oh, it's ancient Egyptian. Well, yeah, it probably was. You were probably there at the time.
Yeah.
It's snippets like that.
Yeah, and well, at this stage, Sarah's a thirsty bitch. Not only does she, I mean, both ways. She takes a glass of sherry.
But she doesn't like sherry.
She doesn't like sherry.
Do you think sherry is a metaphor for relationships with women?
Maybe.
Because you don't like sherry. You know, and I know...
I didn't really think
it's
about it.
very clunky.
No,
clumsy,
that could be.
But,
the case.
you know, the whole idea... And sherry, you know, looks like blood as well. Particularly when it's spilt down a white t-shirt. But, you know, maybe that's a little subtle...
It is as soon as she has that,
because
that's when she starts
Beyonce
flirting.
says later...
Yeah.
But you don't like sherry.
Yeah. It's true. Sarah starts asking if Miriam is lonely. She starts complimenting her onk, in more ways than one, and then she starts asking if Miriam's making a pass at her, and then she spills a drink down her, and oh my lord, we get a very close up shot of some icebreakers.
Yeah, it must... Well, in fairness, it must be quite cold in there.
It must have been freezing.
There's always a cross breeze, because the curtains are always flapping.
Well, it's very evident because Susan Sarandon's nipples looks like they're about to burst out of a white t-shirt.
Yeah, she's wearing quite a tight white t-shirt, and yeah, she might as well have not been wearing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, soon enough, Miriam puts her feet up, and Sarah takes the top off anyway. And
if I spill down my top, you just sort of rub it and just like, okay, that's it for the rest of the day. But yeah, she decides she's going to change her top.
And this leads to a very raunchy, erotic sex scene between the two of them, with, you might guessed it, some blowy curtains.
Yes. So there's a lot. So it's quite a prolonged.
It's very, especially
very
for its
sensual.
time.
There's a lot of close-ups. Of body parts and lips, and there's a lot of shots, you know, behind curtains, you know, sheer curtains and stuff, very blowy. Do you think this sex scene was necessary?
Yeah.
Do you think the length of this sex scene was necessary?
Maybe not, but it kind of... I don't know, I just thought it was quite satisfying knowing that this was released in a film in the 80s.
Yeah.
And quite a mainstream film as well, by all means. It was released by MGM.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a very bold move to make. And I like that.
And
I mean,
two well-known actresses as well.
I mean, it's very shocking for its time.
Yeah, I mean, now we're a bit like... Oh.
Yeah, if it was released nowadays, I don't think it'd be that necessary to be that long. But
No.
I think for its time it's released, I think it was a bold statement to make, you know, putting something like this out there in such a film that so many people are going to see. You know, I think it's great. I think that's a real good addition to the film.
Do you think that if it was two men...
It may have been a bit different, yeah.
Because if you're talking about, you know, the AIDS epidemic at the time, that was mainly within the homosexual male community.
Yeah.
Do you think that if this scene was between two men, that it would have made its money back?
I think there probably would have been more of an outrage. Yeah, I definitely don't think it would have made its money back.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, and... yeah, it's true. I mean, like I said, it's groundbreaking enough that it's two women, but if it was two men, I don't think it would have got the reaction.
No.
You know, I think it would have been, like I said, more of an outrage.
Do you think that the scene, some of it was for the titillation of a straight male audience? Because that's your audience for films like this. Let's be honest. You know, this is a horror film in the 80s. Your target audience is young men, you know, who are going to watch. Do you think that maybe and I'm not taking anything away from the representation, you know, of, you know, two women having a sex scene together, you know, that's fairly groundbreaking. at the time, you know, it's what's the studio that released the film? Is it
MGM,
MGM,
yeah.
an MGM film, with a fairly decent budget, and some well-known people. But do you think that
It's for
that
sexualizing
scene,
the two characters.
they knew it would be so controversial,
Mm.
but also quite titillating, and therefore that, because I from what I'd heard of the film before watching it, because there's a lot to the film and it's a great
Yeah.
film, but all I'd ever heard was, "Ooh, Susan Sarandon gets her boobs out,"
Yeah.
and there's a lesbian scene and all that business. Do you think, maybe it's the cynic in me, but that was played up maybe a little too much?
Yes and no, because I mean, yes, in a way that this director went on to direct a lot of very masculine action films.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like something that, you know, someone of that sort of standard would do for their sort of target audience. But at the same time, was their target audience young straight men? Because nowadays, this is a very camp film. You know, this is in a way.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, it embraces the LGBT side of things, and it's a romantic vampire film. Are romantic vampire films targeted towards straight men? I don't know. Because
This is pre-Twilight.
it is pre-Twilight, but it is still very much a romance. A very twisted one.
Yeah.
But it took the romantic side of vampires and not the murdering maniac side of vampire thing. So would this be... Because I don't know whether this film's audience was straight white men. That's nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's nothing
Whether
to do
it's...
with
I'm usually in debates like this. It's normally something that comes up when we talk about diversity in cinema. But if it's young straight men, I don't know if that was the target audience for this film.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the advertising necessarily played up that part of it too much.
No, because I mean, David Bowie is very present in all the advertising. I mean, by this stage, he's dead.
Yeah.
You know,
he dies sort of
Yeah.
halfway through the film.
I think that was the selling point. So I don't know. It's very new wave as
I
well.
just
So
think
I don't know whether it's
sometimes-
just.
Yeah.
I mean, without being around in the 80s, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Because I mean, so many 80s films now are just embraced. You know. We're fans of camp films, you know. It's not. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah, because I don't feel like this would have been camp back in 1983. It's
no.
definitely quite camp now.
Yeah.
Seeing it, and yeah, I just for me personally, I'm not sure if there was a little bit of cynical sort of, oh, let's get this in there and get some word of mouth out, and we can get a lot of people coming in to watch for that scene.
Yeah.
You know, and plenty of fantastic films have had one scene that overshadows the rest of the film. You know, that's timeless.
That's very much what Jennifer's Body did. I mean, you look at Jennifer's Body, that's a film that looks like it was made for gay horror fans. It's very much Mean Girls, but horror.
Yeah.
But when that was released, all the marketing was mainly on Megan Fox being over-sexualized and that one lesbian scene.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see where you're coming from. It could be very much the case of the same sort of thing. This looks like it was made for a more camp audience. But again... You know, word of mouth could have been about that one scene.
Yeah.
So,
and that scene's definitely filmed. I feel like it's a commercial.
Yeah.
Like, massively. If you see any sort of advertisement during that period, very sort of the one that comes to mind, I know this sounds quite silly, is you remember the flake adverts? Where there's like the lady in the bath sensually eating a flake.
yeah.
And that's what I was getting, and the music, the classical music playing. It's a well-known piece of classical music, but to me it was really giving off like fashion advert or something from Vogue. And
Well, what's interesting now you mentioned this,
with a very sexual nature.
Well, what's interesting now you mention this is that the same piece of classical music was used in the lesbian scene in Piranha 3D. And that was very much not for the LGBT community, that film. That scene was very much to get people to go and watch it.
Exactly.
So that's...
Was that the one with the underwater?
Yeah, and the underwater sex scene. That was stylised and put to that music. So now I can see where that came from now.
Yeah.
So that's very, very interesting.
But I do, and I think maybe it is an idea for future, for us to look at, and I'm sure it's been looked at plenty of times. Is that idea that, is it insulting to put, a lesbian sex scene or a lesbian relationship within a film purely to titillate a straight male audience?
Yeah.
And, it's because these aren't gay actresses.
No.
They're not.
And that's a whole other issue.
yeah, excuse me, I don't wish, but it's a very interesting one, and
yeah,
for me personally, it would be nice to read up on it. If anybody else has any opinions on that, we always love hearing your opinions on stuff like that.
Well, we have Pride Month coming up soon, when we'll be talking about stuff like that some more.
Yeah.
This would have been a perfect film for Pride Month. I didn't even consider it. I mean, I struggled enough to find a film for this week for romantic horror, and this just came to mind.
But there's plenty of horror films do it as well. And I know that Piranha 3D is pretty much a comedy.
Yeah, and that was
but
very
they make
much
fun of it. And is it Freddy versus Jason? Which one is it? Freddy versus with the simulation of Jason.
Jason X.
When you've got the two topless women kissing. And ooh.
Yeah, well, during that was a very different era. Once you get into the early 2000s, it was very much around that time was just lesbians for sexualizing women for straight men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that happened very often.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to the film. During this sex scene, Miriam bites Sarah.
We get a little bit of blood,
Get a little bit of blood, and then we cut to some steak being cut. Rather rare, is it?
Very rare steak. Very, very rare.
Very rare. And it's Sarah and her boyfriend Tom having dinner. And Tom's a bit of a dick. He's he's got every right to be. She did disappear for 3 hours.
He's just very suspicious of what happened because she's acting a bit weird. She's ordered 2 meals that she hasn't touched because she's not hungry. And so here's the part where we're like, oh, okay, this bitch is a vampire now.
Yeah.
This is where we're like, oh, okay, so she's hungry, so that's why she's ordered the food, but she ain't hungry for steak or clams.
No.
She's hungry for a bit of human blood.
Yes. And after they have a bit of an argument...
Yeah, because he's rightly suspicious that she spent 3 hours...
Well, she has the necklace, doesn't she? She has
she's been given a necklace by this woman that she's only just met, and now she's acting weird. You would be suspicious.
So they take her to the doctors because she's not feeling too good.
Well, all she can think about... No, excuse me. Just whilst he's talking... is that all she can think about is nude swimming with Miriam.
There's a bit of naked swimming. Intercut with...
Now that's Piranha 3D.
That's, if they just swap the music around from those 2 scenes. So then she goes to the doctors that she works with, and Charlie, the doctor that she and Tom works with, is looking into her blood.
She's ravenous, but she can't eat, is what he says.
Yes. And she says, I need a cigarette.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
So there's not human blood that, is fighting with her blood cells. They find the bite mark, and Sarah's not having none of this, so she goes to question Miriam about what the fuck's going on. And she's wearing a very fancy green coat in this scene.
She is, actually. It took me so by surprise, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm like, where'd she get this coat from? Fantastic. Green Mac, isn't it? It's like a trench coat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They have a bit of an argument. Miriam tells her that she gave some everlasting life as a kind gift. They have a bit of an argument. She throws her to the floor.
Yeah, so Miriam's kind of like super strong, really. Yeah, she throws her across the room.
Yeah, Sarah tells her she thinks she's crazy and storms out, goes to the phone booth, tries to get hold of Tom, but she can't. And at this point, we see a cameo from Willem Dafoe.
We do.
Willem Dafoe at a phone booth, asking, how about it, huh?
Yeah.
So I don't know what he wanted.
No.
And then his friend calls her a crazy fucking junkie.
Yeah.
I
suppose maybe, and then she is potentially an addict,
Yeah, it's very much a metaphor for addiction as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we've focused a lot on the LGBT side of things, but it is very, very much a film about addiction.
Yeah.
Which is why I think last year's Bliss worked so well, is because that was about addiction, but it was very much on the nose. Like, the addiction was very clear in that film.
Yeah.
It was like The Hunger, but with lots of drugs, basically.
Yeah, this is more subtle.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah, this is for you to make your own mind of this film. I mean, we're saying what our interpretations of the film is, but
yeah, but she's pretty much got a puncture hole on her arm.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm like,
but not just about the addiction side of things. Like, everything in this film.
Yeah.
There's a number of ways you can take it. So make your own mind. But again, let us know what you think this film's trying to say. So she goes back to Miriam's house, and Miriam gives us a bit of Julia from Hellraiser. Finds a guy, brings him back to the house.
That's
this is where I thought the Hellraiser.
Yeah, very Hellraiser. Goes to pick up a douchebag.
Yeah,
or we're meant to think he's a douchebag from a club. She's looking very saucy. Takes him back.
Yeah, he gets a bit too nosy. Starts going around in the lift, having a look around the house. And Miriam slits his throat with her nails.
No.
Is it not with her nails?
No.
It kind of looked like it.
No, it's the onk.
Was it with the onk?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see the onk.
But you know what the onk does?
I know,
a knife. Yeah. She takes the top off and it's a knife.
Yeah, I know that.
Knife.
I know that, but I thought it was her nails.
No. It's like... Oh, you haven't seen Cruel Intentions.
No. Don't spoil Cruel Intentions for me.
But you don't kill anyone in Cruel Intentions.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's like Catherine's cross in Cruel Intentions, where she keeps all her cocaine.
Okay, so Miriam starts having a bit of a snack on the guy, and Tom turns up at the house. Miriam lets him in, and he goes and finds Sarah in the bedroom.
And Sarah looks like shit.
Yeah.
She's sweaty, what's she doing on the floor?
She's having a breakdown on the floor. She tries telling him to get out of there, and
she knows what she needs.
She knows,
and she's scared that she's going to do it to him.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, she does. Well, we think she does. I mean, she comes down with blood around her mouth. He's the only other person up there.
Yeah,
so.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So that is that's Tom dead. And then after this, Miriam's playing a bit of piano. Sarah walks into the room with the blood around her mouth. And Miriam tells Sarah she'll live forever. They have another chat about that. They have a kiss. But then, in an unexpected turn of events, I definitely didn't see this coming. Sarah stabs herself with the onk.
Yeah, so... just before this point, Miriam has a little flashback to ancient Egypt.
Yeah, she does.
I don't really get why.
That was a bit random.
That was a little bit random.
Probably one of her many lovers.
Yeah. She looked great as an ancient Egyptian, though. So Miriam, very much like John, is at her lowest point. It didn't take her 200 years to get there. She's very much at her lowest point. She's just killed the man she loves, so that she can feed on his blood. And I think addiction it's hit her hard because she's hurt the people that she loves because of this addiction, and I've never really had to deal with addiction, but I'm assuming it's very much sort of a similar, when you're so low, it hurts the people around you, and she can't deal with it, and she's a bit like, if this is how I'm gonna have to be, and she's gonna be stuck with this Miriam bitch for about 200 years as well, and she barely knows her, So she's just a bit like, do you know what, I'd rather just die. I'll kill myself now and end, you know, what will become an excruciating pain. Because the guilt she would feel. You know, John was seen as quite, I don't know if this is a word, but remorseless. He did...
Yeah, he couldn't care less about the killing and...
Not really.
Yeah.
You know, that was a means to an end. They quite enjoyed it, as you saw at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Whereas Sarah doesn't enjoy it. This is, you know, this is too much. This isn't how she wants to live the rest of her life. Even if she does get to live forever, at what cost? It's at the cost of, you know, potentially thousands of other lives.
Yeah,
Really.
absolutely. And Susan Sarandon herself has said that this scene is her overcoming addiction.
Yeah.
You know, getting rid of it. And
in a very tragic way.
Yeah, in a very tragic way.
She's eventually a very tragic character because of it.
Yeah.
But that is, you know, her way. And it's why that little scene at the end is a bit... It's
why
a
it's
little
pointless.
disappointing.
Yeah.
It is.
Miriam takes Sarah to the total eclipse of the heart room, and the room starts tilting, and then this is when you get your fucking 1960s, 1950s, 50s Hammer style rotting corpses coming out of the grave, like I mean out of their coffins. I thought this scene was so great for horror.
Oh my god, I loved this scene, and it's
so
so different to what we'd seen before.
Yeah. And even the score changes.
Yeah.
Before this, you get very synthy, atmospheric,
classical as well.
Yeah, classical music. You know, you had your Iggy Pop song as well, and Bauhaus at the start. But then, as soon as this scene happens, the score dramatically changes to something you would hear in a film from the '60s, something you would hear from a film in the late '50s.
Yeah.
That's similar to this, a monster or zombie film. And then, again, the makeup is very much. Hammer horror.
Do you know what? I thought they looked like Fulci style
zombies. Yeah, even Fulci zombies.
Very much Fulci style zombies.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's such a great scene. They all come out of the coffins, all of her ex-lovers, and they all surround her. The doves start going fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And Miriam, for the second Valentines film where this has happened, she falls from the top floor of her of her house and goes down the stairways, hits the ground, and then she starts aging rapidly in the same way that David Bowie would have, but in a lot more in-your-face way.
Yeah.
And then everybody, all the corpses, they all start rotting after they look down at her, and that's the end of Miriam.
Yeah, this is great.
So you think, and so it should have been originally, the lieutenant arrives to follow up you know, what happened with Alice, and the estate agent in there tells her that the occupants of the place have died, and that's where it should have ended originally, but instead we get a bonus scene which is quite weird, of Susan Sarandon, of Sarah and Miriam. They have a kiss. We think it's John sitting on the sofa, maybe.
They're in some sort of flat, and it's very brightly lit.
Yeah,
which is weird.
And this looks like London. This looks like London,
very much so. But for a film that's so darkly lit throughout the whole thing, the lighting reminded me very much of Suspiria.
Yeah,
where it would just be one key colour.
It's true
through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you know, no one can switch a fucking light on. Doesn't even have a light bulb. But this last scene is very much a London flat.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it doesn't change my enjoyment of the film, but
no,
at the same time, it doesn't need to be there.
Because I just sort of sat here and was like, "What?"
Yeah, and Sarah's just like staring over London. Clearly.
Yeah, she's just staring over London from
and there's like
a balcony.
But what's weird is she kisses Miriam, but it kind of sounds like Miriam's trapped in a coffin, screaming out for help.
Yeah,
it's really a nonsensical ending.
It made no sense, and if it was for a sequel, then I don't know where they would have went with that sequel after that. You know, so, and it just, in the context of that last scene where Dr. Sarah kills herself to end her addiction.
Yeah, it just defeats the purpose of it.
It defeats the purpose of it, because if she's still going to be in cahoots with Miriam and John, what does that even mean then? Is she still addicted? You know... where are they?
Yeah,
London?
and
Did they
it
get a flight
defeats
to London?
it defeats the law as well that the film had created about the aging and everything. Because I mean,
Exactly.
if that was the case, then why didn't John come straight back after his death scene and look
Yeah.
like he did before?
Yeah,
It's a messy, very messy ending that should not have been put
No,
there.
it shouldn't have been.
So
It's
fuck you,
disappointing.
MGM. Thank
But
you very
that's
much
the
for that.
thing, and we've said it before that sometimes the studios do get too involved in films, and
Yeah.
it does ruin the enjoyment a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, if you ever watch it, just after Dan Hedaya, the detective, discovers the Polaroid, just switch it off.
yeah. Just turn it off. Do yourself a favour.
Yeah.
But I am excited to see where to go with the sequel. I honestly, I love this film so much. Solid 5 stars for me. I think the style, everything about it was just fantastic. One of my new favourite vampire films. It's just brilliant.
Yeah,
Really
I really enjoyed the film. I was saying to Gary though, I think it teetered on the edge of style over substance at some points. But as a whole film, it was really enjoyable to watch and brings up some really good ideas and some, this hasn't been a particularly funny podcast. I do apologise for
No,
that.
and that's the thing. We've always said masterpieces and trash to pieces, and sometimes you're going to have serious episodes like this, like our
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs one.
Where we bring up themes and interesting, discussions, and I'm certainly no expert on this film, but these are my ideas from one watch, and it's the fact that this film can bring up those ideas, and I can sit here and talk about what things mean, and it means it's a good film.
Yeah.
It's doing what it needs to do.
Absolutely.
It isn't. Not all films need to be brainless humour. I enjoy sitting and watching a brainless film. It's great. It's a lot of fun, but sometimes I like to be intellectually stimulated, and this film did that. So
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going on a bit of a segue about serious episodes. The next 2 weeks, we've got 2 more fucking good films. We have Women in Horror Month for the next 2 weeks.
Oh, we have.
Because obviously, I mean, with February, it's Women in Horror Month. It's LGBT History Month. I believe it's Black History Month. I believe.
I believe
It's
so.
it's also obviously Valentine's Day. So we want to split it up as much as we can. I mean, I'm sure we will touch on African American cinema a little later in the year at some point. In regards to Black History Month, obviously we're going to be doing a whole month for Pride in June. So we thought we'd split February up into Valentine's and Women in Horror. So next week is your week for Women in Horror, and what are we talking about?
Carrie.
Yes, it is Carrie. You got it right.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. This is extremely rude of me. But Black History Month is February in the United States.
Oh, okay. So when is
whereas
it
in the
UK?
United Kingdom it's October. I knew it wasn't Feb. In my head I was like, no, I don't think they're the same.
Okay, so I mean, in October we obviously have the Halloween franchise, but we'll have to make a point to set some other time aside for it now.
So.
Because there's a lot to be discussed with
There
that.
are some fantastic, African American horror films.
Yeah. But yes, so...
Sorry, my
yes.
sincerest apologies. Next week we're going to be talking about Carrie, the Brian De Palma masterpiece.
Yeah. That's your choice, and it's a very good choice for Women in Horror because
I think you see a little bit of every kind of woman.
yeah.
It's definitely a film about women.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Sissy Spacek is one of my favourite women. Gary knows this. One of my favourite actresses. I fucking love this film. It's entertaining. It's food for thought. It's amazing. I cannot wait. Love it. Love this film.
Yeah, absolutely. And the week after, I'm going to have to put a poll out actually because I'm stuck between 2 films. I don't know which one I want. It's definitely going to be either Jennifer's Body or Evil Dead, the 2013 reboot/sequel. Because both of these, again...
It's a remake!
Fuck off, it's not a remake. Both of these are very much, female-focused horror films. And again, they have different types of representation of female in them. So yeah, I'm going to put a poll out, let you guys decide which one we do. And so that's our next 2 weeks schedule.
Yes.
2 more good films, and then I'm sure we'll be going back to shit after.
Yeah. I think we'll get fed up of talking about good films.
Yeah.
So then I think of a real shitty film to watch.
So yes, as always, if you're listening on iTunes, rate, review and subscribe. Anything else, like and follow. Social media, we're Horror Court Trash over on Facebook and Instagram. Horror Court Trash on Twitter. We had a message actually about this. I can't remember the user's name on Twitter, and because obviously I put on there that we hadn't seen this, and they said it was a cult classic. It's a fantastic film. You were absolutely right. We fucking loved it. I'm on social media. Gaz Cruz 92 on Twitter, Gazmo205 on Instagram, and Gaz92 on Letterboxd.
I am Chris Barker 823 on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. If you interact with me more, I might actually post some shit once in a while.
That'd be nice.
So check me out.
So we will see you the same time, same place next week.
Bye.